Hello, fellow members of the Alliance, and welcome to episode 6 of the Alliance Football Podcast. I'm your host, Rod Villagomez. You can find me on Twitter at RJ Villagomez. Find the show on Twitter at AllianceFBPod. We have got a spectacularly fun show for you today. We're going to go over some more history. We're going to go over Memphis and Birmingham, their football history. We are going to talk to the AAF Whiz Kid himself. You'll get to know him, his story, and why he's excited about the AAF. And we also have the gentleman from Fleet Speak Podcast. So we are so excited to welcome them in as well. Like I said, great show. So let's just get it going. All right, so let's open our history books once again, and we are going to jump to two more cities and look at their pro football histories. This week, we are going to do Memphis and Birmingham, and boy, I got to tell you, before starting this little experiment, I never realized how much history there was in football in these two cities, so we got a lot to cram in a little bit of time, so let's get to it. Memphis started their pro football history in 1927. That's right. 1927 was the first pro football team that was actually called Memphis home, and they were the Tigers of the American Football League. And this isn't the American Football League that your grandparents knew. This was actually one of those short-lived leagues again that called themselves the American Football League. Not much. I feel like there's really not a whole lot of creativity when it comes to naming these leagues sometimes. But in 1927, the Memphis Tigers played in the American Football League. They started out as the New Brise Hurricanes. And then they moved to Memphis, or not moved to Memphis, but they were called the Memphis Tigers shortly thereafter. Something of note for these 1927 Tigers, though, they actually ended up beating the Green Bay Packers, those vaunted Green Bay Packers, in 1929. They beat them 20-7, actually. So that was a big feather in their cap. And in fact, this Memphis Tigers team was one of the more formidable teams in the American Football League and really in football in general, and wanted to make a run at being an NFL team. Again, the fact that they beat the Packers in 29, that same Packers team that actually went on to win the NFL championship that year in 1929, actually really made Memphis a powerhouse and wanting to join the NFL. They were owned by S.A. Goodman, who actually helped form the American Football League. And they finished that year with a 5-3-2 record, and they had 94 points for and 76 points against. So 94 points in 9-10 games. That's pretty good. Pretty good for back then. So, that was the 1927 American Football League Tigers, the Memphis Tigers. It's a very interesting read. I suggest if you want any more information on any of these teams, go back and start looking because there's a lot of rich history. And all I'm doing is just hitting the highlights because I got to tell you, it's when you start digging into these football leagues and why they ended up folding, or even the fact that there was a lot of steam to some of them, but they just kind of fizzled out. It's pretty crazy. So again, the very successful 1927 Memphis Tigers. Then a very long gap in history, but restarted again in 1974 with the Memphis Southmen, who later became the Memphis Grizzlies of the World Football League. And we know the World Football League. We talked a little bit about it last week, but Memphis had the Southmen as they started up in 1974. Coached by John McVay. That name may sound familiar because his grandson is actually coaching in a playoff game coming up this weekend, Sean McVay. And so he was the head coach of the Southmen / Grizzlies. And this team was actually supposed to start in Toronto, but Canada had a kind of no competition clause for pro teams from the States competing in the Canadian market because of the Canadian Football League. So they could not play in Toronto in an American league. So they had to actually go down to Memphis and become the Southmen. The residents of Memphis didn't like the name. They actually did not approve of the Southmen. So they ended up nicknaming them the Grizzlies because of the helmet that they wore. It was a Grizzly helmet. Go look it up. Like I said, It was a helmet or a bear rather, kind of peeking out of the sun. So they were unofficially known as the Grizzlies because they didn't like the Southmen, and so eventually they just adopted it and became the Grizzlies. One of their notable players was Larry Zonka of the Miami Dolphins. We remember him, big rugged running back when you think of those undefeated team. And then actually Elvis, the King himself, was at the home opener for the Memphis Southmen. And that was pretty cool. I guess that was a feather in their cap. They made, just like the Memphis Tigers, a pretty good bid. They wanted to enter the NFL as an expansion team because the team was actually really good. Much like the Tigers, this Southman / Grizzlies team was a pretty good team, and they really wanted to put their name in there as an NFL expansion team. Ultimately, they didn't do it, obviously, and they ended up not getting an NFL team. But they did finish 17-3, which was the best in the league. And unfortunately, they lost to the Florida Blazers. We talked about them last week in the playoffs in 1974. So that was the Memphis Southmen. 10 years later, the Showboats came to Memphis. And of course, they were part of that United States Football League, which everybody loved so much. They came in as an expansion team. And really cool on their roster, they actually they had Reggie White, which we all know from his long time as an Eagle and a Packer. And now in the Hall of Fame. And then they had Lex Luger, the wrestler, was on their roster. That's pretty cool. Of course, he went on to become a wrestler, but he did play for the Showboats for a brief time. The Showboats made it to the playoffs in 1985, but they lost to the Oakland Invaders. They actually drew solid crowds. It wasn't, again, Memphis has loved their football while they've had it. Unfortunately, they just haven't had it very long. But for the Showboats, they actually drew a solid crowd. So that was something. Again, when the league folded, there was nothing left for Memphis to do, because the NFL still wouldn't have them, which is crazy. A fun fact from this is that a clip from their game against the Tampa Bay Bandits was actually shown on a SpongeBob episode. Go look that up. I actually haven't looked up the clip yet, but I really want to. But the Memphis Showboats can be seen on SpongeBob playing the Tampa Bay Bandits. I think Squidward was involved in that scene, so go look it up. It seems kind of fun. And then in 1995, the CFL, with their southern expansion, brought the Mad Dogs to Memphis. Now, they wanted to be the Hound Dogs, but I think there was a lot of copyright issue and a lot of something with Elvis's estate, so they couldn't actually be the Hound Dogs, so they ended up being the Mad Dogs of the CFL. But the problem is that, and this was the problem with a lot of the CFL teams that were coming south, American fields are not set up for a CFL field. A CFL field is longer and wider, and so American fields aren't ready for that kind of change, and so they actually had a hard time making the Liberty Bowl fit the CFL regulations. There's a lot of, if you read into it, there's a lot of things that they tried to do. In fact, it wasn't a regulation size. The end zones are supposed to be 20 yards deep, but they didn't have them 20 yards deep there. And then other little things that they tried to do to make the Liberty Bowl fit CFL standards, and it didn't work. And so, it was difficult, and eventually it ended up, not working out in the States. And so the Mad Dogs went away. But it eventually all closed up, right, due to sagging attendance. And then we'll talk about it in a second. The Oilers actually needed the stadium. But the Mad Dogs owner at the time was really pushing for the CFL to make changes to accommodate the American teams. And he wanted them to make the field shorter and narrower like NFL. But that didn't work. And the CFL didn't care. They didn't want to change the game just because the Americans wanted to change it. So it ended up not working. So the Mad Dogs folded and went away. No more CFL in Memphis. Then 2 years later, the Titans came to town. They were the Tennessee Oilers at the time because they were moving from Houston over to Tennessee. But Nashville didn't have the stadium ready for them yet. They didn't have the big, beautiful Adelphia Coliseum, which is what it was when it opened to the fans. So they had to use the Liberty Bowl for at least a season until the Coliseum was built. But there again, it had attendance problems as well because a lot of the folks knew that Nashville was going to end up being the home of the Titans. And so the folks from Nashville didn't want to drive to Memphis to watch their home team. And then likewise, Memphis knew that it wasn't going to be their home team, so they decided to not really embrace the team. So the Titans had a brief stay in Memphis rather. And, again, that didn't work out either because they weren't going to stay there ultimately anyways. So in 2001, the XFL brought the Maniacs with them. They were the only team to have beaten the actual eventual champions of the XFL twice. They beat the LA Extreme. A couple of notables on their roster was actually Jim Druckenmiller, which 49er fans can remember from his time at the 49ers. And then a quarterback, of course. And then Rashaan Salam. If you guys remember his name, it was because he played on the Bears for a little while. And he was actually a Heisman Trophy winner. So, he played on there a while. So then indoor football had a couple of stints. In 1995, the Pharaohs of the AFL played in the Pyramid Arena, right? They were the Pharaohs and they played in the Pyramid Arena. Only made one playoff appearance, though, and then they ended up moving to Portland to become the Forest Dragons in 1997. And then the AF2 had the Explorers in 2001, same as the Maniacs. They were an expansion team in the AF2. And then they're named and their logo. Go look up their logo. It's the Explorers, Xplorers. They were named for Spanish explorer Hernando de Soto. And it's kind of an interesting little helmet they've got going on there. They ended up winning a title in 2005. They won the Arena Cup 6, and they beat Louisville Fire 63-41. So that is the Memphis, the brief down and dirty of Memphis. So much more to go. I mean, go explore it. It's amazing. It's so much fun to go back and look through it. So let's turn our attention to Birmingham, who has just about as rich a history in football as Memphis. In 1974, the World Football League, they were the Americans, the Birmingham Americans. They actually won the World Bowl in 1974, and they led the league in attendance and won all 13 of their home games. So they were very much a good team, a good solid team. And of course they ended up being World Bowl champs. They actually had Kenny Stabler. They signed Kenny Stabler, but there was a lot of controversy about NFL signing bonuses and the fact that league folded anyways. So Kenny Stabler never actually played for the Birmingham Americans, but he was on their team. In 1975, a year later, they had the Vulcans because the Americans folded and Birmingham, obviously they were going to get another team, but they couldn't have the Americans because the Americans ended up folding due to financial situation, all kinds of crazy nonsense. So they closed the Americans, and then in 1975, the World Football League replaced them with the Vulcans. They had the best record in the league at 9-3. They had the best attendance as well, just like the Americans did. But unfortunately, the league folded before they could have a championship that year in 75. So they ended up naming the Vulcans the champs just because of the fact that they had the best record in the league and they were the best team at the time. So fun fact is that the Birmingham team is the only champion of the World Football League of that time. So 1983, the Stallions came in the USFL. Just a couple of notables from that. They actually had Scott Norwood, who we know from Buffalo Bills fame. And they, just like their other two predecessors, were very successful franchises. And they ended up winning 2 divisional championships. So again, Birmingham, very successful in their football endeavors. They were actually the first pro team to draft Jerry Rice. Unfortunately, we know he didn't play there, but he was there. I mean, he got drafted to the Stallions. And then in 1991, the World League of American Football, that was the one that went overseas afterwards, brought the fire to Birmingham. They were a charter member of the league. And then once the league kind of went away and came back as the World League, they actually came back as the Rhine Fire. So they moved overseas to become the Rhine Fire. They had a 12-7-1 record. So yet another winning team in Birmingham. And then the CFL also did their expansion down there in Birmingham as well. They had the Barracudas in 1995. And just like Memphis, it was the same thing. They had the attendance struggles. They had the fact that especially after the NFL season began, they couldn't fill the seats, and they couldn't make the field suitable for CFL standards. One notable CFL fans will definitely know who I'm talking about right now. Matt Dunnigan was their quarterback. And Matt Dunnigan was a Grey Cup winning champion for the CFL up there. And he's actually now an analyst an analyst on TSN, on the sports network up there in Canada. Very loud, very southern, very rambunctious, but he was their quarterback. And then again, the Memphis, just like Memphis and everybody else, the owner wanted to change the rules of the CFL game, and nobody wanted that. So, and then in 2001, the XFL brought the Thunderbolts with them. Now, this team was not quite as successful as their other counterparts. In fact, they were last place, and they were the worst record in the league with 2-8. And you know how in most teams they actually had nicknames on the back of the jersey? Well, the head coach of the Thunderbolts said, nah, they were using their real names, and they banned them from using nicknames on the jersey. Wow. That was a trip, right? Birmingham, Memphis, long and storied pasts in pro football. Can't wait to see what they do with the two teams from the Alliance. Let's move on. All right, let's take some time to look at some of the news and notes from around the AAF. And it seems that Zach Stacy is now back into the AAF with the Express. He is back as of Monday in training camp with Memphis. And this is huge because, again, Zach Stacy is another one of those names that former NFL or even current NFL fans are going to remember. And it's actually going to put some eyeballs on the league, I hope. Because, again, Zach Stacy is a great running back. He actually had some very solid years. Unfortunately, he kind of became the butt of some jokes toward the end. But he was a solid back. And I feel like he's got something to offer, especially this league. And folks up in the CFL world actually remember him too, because he did make some sort of a comeback up there with the Riders. Unfortunately, it wasn't that big of a comeback because there was so many other running backs that the Saskatchewan Roughriders had, former NFL running backs, up to and including Trent Richardson, who is also with the league. But yeah, with Zach Stacy again in the league, this is another one of those names that we talked about earlier that I feel is going to make people watch this league that may not have watched it before. If nothing else, to make fun of them, but hopefully they don't make fun of them and learn that the league is actually worth something while they watch it. So good luck to Zach Stacy. I really did enjoy watching him run, and I hope I do too with the Memphis Express. Speaking of folks coming and going, Brad Childress. You probably already know this, but if you don't, Brad Childress, the former head coach of the Atlanta Legends, is no longer the coach. And there's so many people out there that are writing Brad's, just writing him hard for quitting yet another head coaching job or another coaching job in general. But of course, his stated reason that he wanted to spend more time with his family. Look, it's noble. I get it. When you're a coach, you don't get to see your family a whole heck of a lot. So who knows really what his ultimate reason was for stepping down, but obviously he's stepping down, and that puts Kevin Coyle, the former defensive coordinator for the Legends. He is now bumped up to be the football head coach of the Atlanta Legends. He's actually got a pretty long coaching history. Started back in 1978 with Cincinnati, the college, not the Bengals, and then had other assignments in Arkansas, Holy Cross, Syracuse, Fresno State, who's the defensive coordinator in Fresno State, when I actually started becoming a fan of the team. He's had some pro experience with the Bengals and the Dolphins, and then ultimately was the defensive analyst for the LSU Tigers before coming to Atlanta. So now he is going to be the head coach of the Legends. There was that brief rumor that Michael Vick was actually going to step down as well, but unfortunately, I guess, for the Atlanta Legends, he did not step down, and he was actually remaining as the offensive coordinator. So good news for the Legends. Good news, bad news. Good news is that you still get to keep your offensive coordinator and superstar Mike Vick. Bad news that you lose Brad Childress. But again, good news because Kevin Coyle has got a long coaching history and could do very well as a head coach. Maybe this is one of his last opportunities to get an NFL job again. So yeah. And then another big story that came out this last week is that the times for the games have been officially announced. for all of the games. The whole schedule, all the times for the games are announced, and it's crazy. I mean, obviously we know that week 1 is going to be Atlanta at Orlando. That's happening at 8 p.m. Eastern, so 5 o'clock my time over here on the West Coast, and that's going to be, of course, the televised game. San Diego at San Antonio is going to be another 8 o'clock game Eastern. Now, this is where I'm hoping, among hopes, that the AAF app allows for you to watch games at a later time. Just like the ESPN Plus app allows you to watch games that have already happened for at least up to about a week or 2. You can actually go back and watch games. Because again, I'm going to want to watch all 4 of these. And if there's 2 of them on at 5 o'clock Eastern, I'm not going to be able to watch them both unless maybe I'm streaming one on the app and the others on CBS. But we'll see. Hopefully I can go back and watch the game after I can watch the San Diego San Antonio game after I watch Atlanta Orlando on TV. So please, AAF, if you are listening, make it possible to where you can watch all these games on demand at any point that you want, because it would make being a fan of this league a lot easier, especially when you double book. Now look, the rest of the times there's double booking on just about. No, there's no double booking anymore. So I'm hoping that would be just a one-time thing, and that, you can watch for the rest. But anyways, and then Memphis, Birmingham, 2 p.m. Eastern, and then Salt Lake, Arizona, 4 p.m. Eastern. So on that Sunday. And again, this is going into that. They want these games to be crisp. They want them to be very, very short. So that's why there's really not a whole lot of in-between time between these 2 and these 4 p.m. Eastern games. Obviously, they want the game to be done hopefully before the next one starts. And so if that's the case, then they're able to cram these start times in the way they are. But looking around the rest of the season, looks like a lot of 3 p.m., 8 p.m. On Saturday, and then 4 p.m., 8 p.m. on Sundays. So if you are a tailgater to the San Antonio folks out there, you now know exactly when it is you are going to be showing up, which probably you'll be showing up the night before, but it looks like a pretty constant Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern. So Sunday night games are going to be the norm for us here as AAF fans. We'll be watching a lot of 5 o'clock Eastern games on Sundays and 1 p.m. So there's no early games for those of you out there on the East Coast. And believe me, I lived in the Eastern time zone, so I knew how much of an absolute craziness it was. I'm sorry, for us West Coasters. I'm getting my coast mixed up. For the West Coasters that wake up in the morning and are expecting a 10 o'clock game, it's not always easy to get to watch a 10 o'clock game for a number of reasons. One, that Sundays are usually days where you got to do some work, and especially in the spring when the winter gets good. So, us West Coasters get to do all of our chores, do everything in the morning, and then settle in at about 1 o'clock for a football game, and then we get to watch the late game. So for us West Coasters, it's perfect. For you East Coasters, I was thinking about staying up late to watch football, which you'll have to do at 8 o'clock. You'll have to, well, actually, if they keep the game short, you may only have to stay up till 10 o'clock to watch a football game. So, yeah, that'll be interesting. Anyways, so that's the times. I mean, you can find all the information again on AAF.com. And then of course, you can look and see for yourself when the games are, but I think it looks reasonable. I feel like this schedule looks like a very reasonable schedule. It's not trying to go overboard. It's not trying to do too much. Again, it's sticking to a couple of days here, Saturdays and Sundays. With the exception of week 10, there is a Friday game thrown in there. So San Antonio, Salt Lake, you guys got a game on Friday in Salt Lake City. And I think that had to do with scheduling of where they were playing. So, yeah, make sure you mark your calendars on that. April 12th, Salt Lake City fans, you have a game a day early. And then, of course, all you fans that are watching, you have a game a day early. So like I said, it looks good. I like the way they've approached this. 2 games Saturday, 2 games Sunday. And again, no 2 games scheduled at the same time, except for, of course, opening night. But it just makes it easier for folks to be able to pay attention to the whole league. And this schedule and seeing it play out the way it does, again, I'm going to go back to the CFL, but that's just because this is, again, a small league and it sort of translates. But when you're able to watch every game as a fan, it makes the league a lot more fun to follow, because you're not, again, the NFL, it's so hard sometimes unless you play fantasy or unless you watch highlights or unless you go back and watch the Red Zone channel. It's hard to learn all the players on all the teams. If you're just a casual fan, if you're a junkie, you're going to do it anyways. But if you're a casual fan and you just want to watch football and enjoy the game, and get into it a little bit more, trying to learn the players, it's not easy to do. The way it's set up now with all, the games going on at once, and you have to either pick one game or watch the 6-game spread or whatever, or have 15 TVs around the house. But for this league, you'll be able to learn the players. You'll be able to get to know the teams and watch all the teams play, which I think is a valuable, it's just valuable to the league to make it stick, because then you're becoming invested in every player, not just one team, not just one city. You can be invested in all of it and actually follow it from start to finish. And when the 2 teams come together in the championship, you'll know the path that they took to get there, rather than saying, oh, well, I never really did get to watch too many AFC games because, I watch NFC on Sunday. Or I got to see this team play maybe twice all season long, so I don't know who's on this team, or like I know 1 or 2 players, but I don't know the rest of it. So having the opportunity to watch every game is going to be an absolute asset to this league. So I'm looking forward to that. And then last but not least, in the news, fellow podcasters, actually podcaster, because Smithy did not get to make it, but I want to give a huge shout out to Van Awesome of the Shipyard Podcast, which we've actually talked to them, both of them, Joe Van Awesome and Smithy, that he was actually on Sirius XM the other day talking about the AAF and the possibility of fantasy. So Howard Bender actually was on the Shipyard, so go listen to that episode. It is an amazing episode. And then so Howard Bender was on the Shipyard Podcast, and then he turned around and extended the invitation to Van Awesome to come on to his show on Sirius XM and talk a little bit about the AAF and talk about fantasy. And I think, for as nervous as I know that Joe was, he knocked it out of the park. Such a great chance to introduce the AAF to the mainstream, and I put that in quotes, media. And it's crazy because now with Bender taking an interest in this, that just means that a lot more eyeballs are going to be on this league. And the opportunity for him to actually start a AAF fantasy league, that's just going to be incredible, because now people are going to be listening to that, because he's got a lot of listeners on Sirius XM, Howard Bender does. And so when people are going to start learning about this league and then the fantasy aspect of it, it's just going to take off. So huge, gigantic kudos go to Van Awesome for scoring that interview and for being the ambassador of the AAF into the Sirius XM fantasy world. And I got to tell you, if you have the Sirius XM fantasy app, I think you can go back and listen to it. I'm hoping that somebody recorded it for Van Awesome. If nothing else, I hope he recorded it, or that he can get the audio from Bender so we can listen to it again, because I think you'll be impressed with the way he handled himself. There was a lot of rapid fire questions tossed his way, and he managed to hold up under the pressure. I know that Fensty was grilling him and really just giving him a hard. Well, I mean, it was kind of a hard time. I mean, these are questions that, obviously, not hard questions, but he was tossing him some hard questions about the league and scheduling and all that other good stuff. And I know that we as podcasters, we're not necessarily the resident experts on everything. We know a little bit about a lot, but we don't know everything, especially front office stuff, because how are we supposed to speak for the front office unless maybe we had one of the presidents on the show or whatever. But even then, we still can't do it. But he was getting asked a lot of questions about the front office and scheduling. And I think, again, if I had an applause button, I would give you applause, Van Awesome, for holding your own in that arena, because I think a lot of us might have crumbled under that pressure. So again, if you have the SiriusXM app, I think you can go back. It's on the SiriusXM Fantasy channel, and you might be able to go back and listen to yesterday's Howard Bender Fantasy Alarm segment. And give Howard Bender a follow right now anyways, because as this AAF Fantasy thing cranks up, I think he's going to be a huge part of it. So him and Van Awesome together are going to probably form the backbone of what we know as AAF Fantasy going forward. So I know I'm excited for it, because I certainly want to play some AAF Fantasy, being the fantasy junkie that I am. So, yep, definitely. Kudos to the Shipyard. Kudos to Van Awesome. Way to represent the Alliance Podcast Network and all of us. So, all right, let's continue on the show. All right, I am talking with the AAF Whiz Kid. His name is Michael Nichols, and we, man, it's just so good to have you on the show. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Okay, so listen, I know that there's a lot of folks that when they're younger, they don't really know exactly what it is they want to do. They just want to play, and now they want to play Fortnite and just have a good time. But you, sir, are starting your career at a very, very young age. How did you get into the world of sports broadcasting?
So I got into the world of sports broadcasting by living in Daytona. I went to my dad took me to NASCAR races from a very young age. And in those, I kind of fell into going to being a broadcaster by accident. I kind of think about it like I went to them and I was given media credentials because I actually knew a lot, and people were starting to see that in me, and they were kind of saying, hey, this kid knows a lot. We should invite him back for more media. Like, he could be useful.
And so, okay, you said NASCAR. Who's your driver?
Truex, Martin Truex Jr.
Okay, I'll forgive it. I'm a Jimmy Johnson fan through and through, have been since 2003, so I'll give you Martin Truex. He's good. He's good.
Yeah.
So, all right. So you got going to NASCAR races young. I mean, what's it like to be a young kid down there on the actual in the thick of it, talking to drivers? Was it scary? Was it? What was your experience?
In my opinion, it's just it's a really cool experience for like a kid to meet some of his idols. Like growing up, who were your sports idols? Let's just say.
You know what? Joe Montana. And let me tell you a quick Joe Montana story. Are you ready? And then we'll get back on it. I had an opportunity to meet Joe Montana once at a football game. He was coaching a kid. It was a high school game. He was coaching him, but I was working at the time for ESPN Radio, and I just did not want to be unprofessional and approach him. So I'm a little sad. So you got to meet some of your idols. Yeah.
Yeah.
So just talk about that. Talk about how it is for because a lot of us adults even get scared to talk to our idols. What was it like for you?
Yeah, some of my idols being in mainly big NASCAR drivers and Martin Truex Jr., Jimmy Johnson, Richard Petty, and some of the other NASCAR legends throughout time. Yeah, Dale Earnhardt Jr. even. It's fun to speak to the idols.
Did you find did you find that they actually really wanted to talk to you, or was it something that you had to kind of convince them that you were not just some other kid looking for an autograph?
They kind of thought it was an interesting story when I told them what my background was, where they thought I was coming from. Yeah, so my first media day was in Chicago and in 2016, and I went to the media event. It was the media day before the Chicago race. I think it was 2 days before, and my dad thought that I couldn't show up there being just another kid in t-shirts doing interviews and walking around. And so the idea was to put me in a fancy outfit and to put on a bow tie. My dad thought of the bow tie idea, but he had little NASCAR logos on it. My mom came up with the checkered flag idea, which is the main thing in NASCAR that I wear. I wear that to every race now.
So when you are thinking of questions, because again, I'm going to come back to this adult thing. For us adults, sometimes interviewing is terrifying. Do you sit and come up with a set of questions the day before, you know what you're going to ask, or do you generally just like to wing it and see what everybody wants to talk about?
Usually around the same time. Sometimes I ad-lib a little bit during the interview, but like sometimes it's like the day before we're thinking like, oh, hey, we didn't think of this a couple days before. How about this? Kind of just constant brainstorming.
The AAF is coming to your area. You're super excited about that. What's that experience been like for you so far?
It's been amazing because I think it was just after the New Year, and I watched the 30 for 30s on the XFL and the USFL, and then I heard the announcement that the XFL was coming back, and I'm like, I hope they have an Orlando team because Orlando hasn't had a football team since, I think, 2002 with the Orlando Rage, and ever since then I've kind of been like, it would be cool if we had a football team because our nearest, I think, is either the Bucks or the Jaguars, and it's far away, and being a pro team, it's not really as entertaining as maybe a new startup football team as in the AAF.
So then when you got and actually wanted to go to be one of the press, how did you manage to go about that? How did you convince them that you, again, weren't just some kid with a pad trying to get autographs?
I got involved with the Apollos by the president of the Apollos is Mike Waddell, who was actually the vice president at Richmond Raceway up in Virginia. So he actually knew me before I came to the AAF. And he saw what work I was doing with the NASCAR, and he kind of has treated me as part of the family in the media department, getting me into the AAF media.
And so you've talked to Coach Spurrier. What was that like?
Talking to Coach Spurrier, he's a legend in sports, in my opinion, because he coached for Florida, USC, and South Carolina. He also, ironically, he coached the Tampa Bay Bandits of the USFL, another startup football league.
Boy, I tell you, you are chock full of knowledge beyond your years, Nug, man. So what is your ultimate goal? What are you looking for in the future? I know you've probably still got a little bit of time left in school, but what do you want to do when you grow up?
When I grow up, I want to be more in sports business, preferably NASCAR, because growing up, I've just seen like, wow, this is a cool sport. I want to get into this when I grow older.
So you want to be in management in NASCAR, or you want to actually maybe manage a team, or how does that work for you?
Basically, any available spot would be fun. I was personally thinking of being more in the business side of the entire sport more than one of the teams.
So out of all of the interviews that you've done with both NASCAR and now the AAF alike, what was your favorite experience, and what was the favorite person that you've actually interviewed?
My favorite person that I've ever interviewed is actually neither from NASCAR or the AAF. It was from the last year's Pro Bowl. It was Drew Brees. He personally one of the nicest people to me because before practice I asked him, could I interview you later? And he's like, after practice I'll come and find you. And after practice, he was true to his word as the people were trying to get him off the field into the locker room where he could get out of everything and just kind of get out of there. He said, I promised I'd I get interviewed by this kid, and he was truthful to his word.
That is amazing. So you probably cheer extra super hard for him right now coming into the next round of the playoffs, huh?
Yeah. All the guys on the Saints have been especially nice to me with Ingram, Kamara, and also Drew Brees.
Ooh,
yeah, Sean Payton.
Put this to rest. Is it Kamara or Kamara? What does he say?
Kamara.
He says Kamara. You have it here, folks.
Yeah.
Awesome. So what do all of your friends at school say? What do they think about the fact that you get to talk to these super athletes?
Most of my friends at school think it's a very cool thing because I'm interviewing people that, let's just say, every football game's on Sunday. I'm interviewing people that they see mainly on TV every Sunday, kind of.
Yeah, that's got to be, I mean, kids come into school and they're like, oh, yeah, I just won a battle royale on Fortnite. You're like, cool, man, I just talked to Drew Brees. That's cool. You keep your Fortnite, yeah?
Yeah.
Cool. So
Yeah.
what are your parents? What do they think about this? What kind of support are you getting from them?
From my parents, I'm almost getting the biggest support out of all of them because my dad takes me to all of the events, and my mom really believes in me, and she makes sure all my clothes that I wear to the events are dry clean. She does everything.
She's got your back, right? She's the super manager while dad's the gopher and chauffeur. That's awesome though. Cause again, a lot of times we all hope for our kids to want to find something, but when you can find something and how old are you? I'm sorry, we never even got to that. How old are you?
I am 13 and I'm a 7th grader.
13 and a 7th grader. And this guy's talking to Drew Brees. What did you do today? That's phenomenal. Do you have plans for any other type of... So where can people see your work? That's actually where we need to go next. Where can people see what you do?
People can see my work at either on Twitter at AAF Whiz Kid or NASCAR Whiz Kid, and the same handle on Instagram also with the AAF Whiz Kid. Also on sikids.com. I've been featured in the magazine sometimes. It was in issues earlier this year.
That's actually where I was going to go next with the SI Kids. How did they find you?
So SI Kids found me by so I was actually originally I was doing all the interviewing thing. My dad saw a talent and he's like, "Why don't we try for this thing called SI Kids?" And I listened to what it was and I thought this is a good idea. So I was one of the 14 kids chosen from the USA to do interviews.
That's awesome. And just to be included in the Sports Illustrated world, first of all, and second of all, to, like I said, be a 13-year-old and be that. So, okay, so now expand out farther. What are your plans for the AAF? Are you planning on maybe a YouTube channel or anything like that, or are you just going to stick to what you know?
So, possibly working with the team or working with the players maybe. I'm not sure which. Maybe working with the team or players, but for right now it will be on my Twitter and Instagram that I mentioned earlier.
And really, honestly, because this is kind of where all sports is how much fun is doing what you do?
It's a lot of fun getting to meet famous celebrities and sports players, and I just really enjoyed it. It's a lot of fun.
Awesome stuff. All right. So one more time, let's go ahead and wrap this up. Tell everybody where they can follow you, where they can find you, and just all of your incredible stuff.
Okay, so they can find me at NASCAR Whiz Kid and AAF Whiz Kid on Twitter, and also NASCAR Whiz Kid and AAF Whiz Kid on Instagram. Also, sikids.com. Yeah, if you Google Michael Nichols SI Kids, my name would pop up with a couple of the articles I've done.
Look at this kid. You can already Google him already. And in fact, I implore you to do it. There is some great stuff, and I'm just in awe. Again, at 13 years old, already has interviewed Drew Brees. You can't get any better than that. And Dale Earnhardt Jr., definitely a life that a lot of us older broadcasters would definitely love to have as well. So listen, I got to applaud your work, and I really hope that you keep this up because you are going to get nothing but better, and we will see you somewhere on our televisions, if not within the next couple of years, certainly when ESPN is smart enough to snatch you up for any type of coverage, or even NBC for some of that NASCAR coverage before you actually go take over for Bill France.
Yeah, I look forward to being on the AAF side of it, possibly.
Awesome. Well, we look forward to it too. Again, his name is Michael Nichols, but you know him better as the AAF Whiz Kid and the NASCAR Whiz Kid, 13-year-old sports prodigy, sports broadcasting prodigy, as it were, out of Orlando, Florida, who will be closely tied with the Apollos this season. Again, keep up with his work. Michael, I want to thank you for taking time out of your day to be with us.
Thank you so much, Rodrigo.
All right, you know them as JB and TK, and if you don't, you need to go check them out. It is the Fleet Speak podcast. I am talking to both hosts today, and I am super excited to have yet another great AAF podcast on the show. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Pleasure to be here.
All right, so you are the host of one of about a trillion Fleet podcasts right now. But let's just talk about how you guys got into the game, because this is not your first rodeo as a podcast, as you've said before in your podcast. But how did you guys get started podcasting with each other, and how did the Fleet Speak podcast come to be?
Well, first of all, I just want to say there may be several Fleet podcasts. We are clearly the best Fleet podcast. I just want to say that right up front. There's another couple of shows down in San Diego, and they're okay. They're fine. If you want a local taste of flavor, that's fine. If you want a sort of a Midwest feel, there's going to be a podcast out there, and that's great too. But clearly the best, I think, Fleet podcast.
Definitely.
Yeah, so we can agree on that.
I was going to say, I'll let your opinions be there. I'm going to stay impartial, but I love you all. So, I mean, that's just me being the let's just all get along type of a guy.
I mean, I can respect that. I understand your position. Clearly, you like us best too, and that's okay. You can meander around. It's okay. As far as when we started, it's funny. I was listening to the Shipyard guys when they were on your show, and when they said they started their first podcast with a snowball microphone,
huddled around a table.
Yeah, that's exactly what we did. It was about, I guess, a year ago in July.
2017.
2017.
Not
we had
2018.
That's right. Because
a year and a half.
Man, it's been so long. A year and a half ago, we started our first podcast, and it was about the NFL, the Broken Plane podcast, and it's still going now. But yeah, I was just going back and listening to those first shows this morning, and the intros to those, and man, that was rough. That's
some ugly stuff.
Yeah, good for anyone who's listening to Fleet Speak. We got all those kinks taken care of early, so we're better. I think we're better now than we were then, probably.
So, what brought Fleet Speak on? What was it that drove you guys to start? Because spoiler alert, you are not in San Diego. So, what prompted you guys to start this podcast about a team from San Diego?
Well, we heard about the AAF, and we got really excited about that and wanted to break into a more one single team podcast, and we wanted to get something to fill our time because we felt like when we got into the offseason of the NFL last year, it really slowed down. It was hard to do something, and we figured we want to still keep podcasting, but we don't want to kind of podcast about nothing in the NFL, so we're going to jump onto the AAF thing. And then we didn't know what the teams were yet, but we definitely decided we wanted to do a podcast on one of the teams. The teams were announced. We kind of jumped back and forth a little bit, and then San Diego was, I think, the second to last team. So then when we decided to go, or when we heard about San Diego, we decided to jump away from our kind of split decision between Salt Lake City and Phoenix and go to San Diego for the coaching staff. We liked them a lot better. The location we liked a lot better. And really, I think that's basically the main reasons we chose those over the Phoenix or Salt Lake City.
We were kind of talking about maybe we would even go to a game. Maybe we'd get on a plane and go catch a game. And where would you rather go fly into, Salt Lake City, Phoenix, or San Diego?
Right.
I think San Diego wins.
Easily.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't see a destination vacation to Salt Lake City. No offense to the fine stallions, but that's not a place you mark on your calendar and say, absolutely want to go here. So.
Yeah,
exactly.
And I've been to Salt Lake City recently, and I've been also to Phoenix recently, and San Diego wins. I don't know how else to say it. They win. It's a more comfortable place to go. There's more fun stuff to do.
Better food.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely better food. And that's the thing about, I mean, again, we're no knock against Salt Lake City. I don't want all you Stallions fans, tweeting the show saying how wrong I am, because I've been to Salt Lake as well, and it's, there's some beautiful country over there. But yeah, if you're going to pick between San Diego in the spring, Salt Lake in the spring, and Arizona, I think San Diego, wins that one hands down. So, so then as you started this podcast, and I know that a lot of us podcasters, when we throw our line out in the water, what's been the response from the organization and from fans? Like, are you enjoying your ride, or is this something that you're probably not going to continue into the future?
No, I think the response we haven't really got a response from the organization. Dave Bowler follows us, and we've had a little bit of interaction on Twitter with him. But we don't have close personal ties with anybody in the organization.
Yeah, we haven't really reached out to them either. So yeah. I would have a hard time seeing them coming to us being as far away as we are with no real reason to come to us. So.
It would seem a little silly.
But they've been open when we have talked to to Jeff Garner or Dave. They've responded to us. And
yeah.
So
yeah, and actually we've had really good luck in our player interactions. We've got a couple of chances to interview a couple of players, and we really haven't had. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, TK. We really haven't had any negative. I don't think anybody's even tried to flame us on Twitter, really.
No, just the shipyard.
It's kind of those guys are dorks. Does that count? I don't know. Smithy and Van Awesome, they're like a couple of playful teddy bears.
Yeah, it fell right off me.
Okay.
Speaking of playful teddy bears, since we do know the contrasting styles of the Fleet Speak podcasts, yours has been often referred to, and even by myself in the podcast that I did covering everybody, as more of the analytical approach. Is that how you guys have approached your Broken Plane podcast and just sort of brought it over from it? Or how did you even get that analytical tag that we gave you?
I don't know.
Well, it's kind of weird. It's really, excuse me. It's really, we hadn't planned on doing it like that. That really wasn't something that had crossed our minds. I think we wanted to make a show that we would want to listen to. So that was important to us. We don't do this kind of thing on the Broken Plane.
Yeah, we're not talking about just players and their history on the NFL side of things.
Yeah, I think mostly this just came around because, if you looked at the 90-man rosters going into minicamp, a lot of those guys you had never heard of before.
I had heard of Bishop Sankey as far as the fleet went before we started any of this. So
Johnson, the quarterback.
Josh Johnson.
That's true. I'd heard about him, and that was really it.
I didn't know anything about him, though.
Yeah. So this was, a way for us to have content for a show because we were looking at it back in November when we started. There wasn't a lot of AAF content, and this seemed like a good way to fill column inches, if you will.
Yeah, and that's an intimidating part of this whole thing too, because even I saw folks that said in a couple of Reddit rooms that were like, well, I'm just going to wait until the season starts to start a podcast or something to that effect. But when you wade into these waters and there's nothing out there for you to actually fish, it can be difficult. So hats off to you guys even for casting your net out there before there was really anything to catch.
Well, I appreciate that, and I think the one that TK and I both really look up to as far as being first among us, the Memphis podcast. The Memphis, what are they? The Express and Goal now? Is that what they've branded themselves as?
That is it.
Because those guys were around in I think they were around in July, weren't they?
As soon as it came out, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, Memphis was one of the first teams announced, and they were right there. I started looking for podcasts for the AAF in I don't know, September or October, and they already had 10 shows in the books. Yeah. When I went looking for them. So I have no idea how they did it. I haven't gone back and listened to all their stuff, but they've been doing a good job getting interviews with the team and just being able to talk about their team. They find something to talk about every week almost. So
yeah,
well done to them.
Their early shows, they were interviewing a lot of the potential, but they were scoping them out on Twitter, the folks that were going to try out even before the combines even happened and the workouts. And they were interviewing a lot of those guys. So yeah, I mean, I told him in our interview, I was like, man, to have 30 some odd episodes out before there's even a league, that's phenomenal.
Yeah, it's pretty fantastic. I think those guys too, this isn't the first time they've done a show either. So they have a little bit of background, so that would have helped. I know if we would have, especially after just listening to all the shows we did back when we started, if we had been in that situation, I think we would have just quit around episode 3 or 4.
What are you guys excited most about for this league, though? I mean, what is it that gets you guys super excited about spring football?
I'm excited to just have more football in general. I'm looking forward to the aspect that they're going to put out the app and all that integration with the fantasy league stuff and being able to watch the games that way. I'm curious to find out if you'll be able to watch the games sort of on demand or if it's just going to be a live only type of thing. I'm really hoping for on demand. And looking to see what comes of the players after the season's over. If we see a lot more of these guys getting chances in the mini camps.
Yeah, and so for me, the whole on-demand thing, I think the same thing. In fact, that's one of my biggest questions is whether or not because I know when I watch the CFL on ESPN3, or on the ESPN Plus app now, you can actually go back and watch. I mean, you don't have to watch them when they happen. They will play them for about a week. So I have about a week if I miss a game live to catch up on it. And I'm hoping that the AAF does the same thing, because I have not missed but one CFL game now in the last 3 seasons, and I've watched all games, and it's 9 teams. So this is a lot like the AAF, where I think you can feasibly watch every game of the season, especially since it's only 10 games, and know what's going on in the entire league, rather than the NFL where you're 16, 14 games a week, and that's hard to watch, especially when you can't go back and watch them on demand.
Right. Yeah, I would settle happily for just a 1 week grace period to be able to catch up at some point after the live event occurs.
Yeah, that'd be great. How long have you done the Canadian Football League show you do?
So the Canadian Football podcast I've done this is the first season that I've done the podcast itself, but I've followed the league for the last 3 seasons. So kind of much like you guys, where the team that I cover right now, the Red Blacks, they didn't have a podcast going into the last season. And I just decided to finally kind of put myself out there, even though I'm an American, to host the show. And yeah, they've embraced it with open arms.
Oh, that's fantastic. So that's really cool.
Yeah, no, it's a blast. And then that, of course, that's why it kind of made the transition a lot like you guys to this podcast a lot easier, because I knew how I wanted to structure the show. I knew how I wanted things to go. And so, it was kind of easy to just sort of say, okay, well, here's content, let's go. So, yeah. And plus, listening to you guys, listening to Memphis, listening to the Shipyard, it all just made me feel inclusive, which is why I had to have everybody at one point on the show, because, your guys' shows all helped me to decide that it was worth it to put out a show.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate it.
So, ego stroking complete. So what are your hopes out of this? I mean, I know that podcasters usually do this for fun, but I mean, is there a chance you are going to go down and watch a game? Would you hope that, you get a decent enough reception to where you can maybe go down and interview players on the field, or what are you hoping for?
We're terrible at interviewing, and we hated it, the 2 that we did. So we're not looking forward to going and interviewing people in person. We may have to do 10 or 20 more on Skype before we get into that territory.
We're really pretty chicken-hearted. I mean, yeah it's just it's nerve-wracking.
We're happy to just do a couple of shows leading up to the season, and then a couple game recaps, and then we'll jump into our NFL stuff. We're not planning to run this the whole season or the whole year.
Year round, yeah. That's the other nice thing about the AAF is the condensed season. So for an NFL podcast, this really kind of fits a great spot in the calendar, if you will, because it all wraps up before the NFL draft.
Right.
Not to rain on the AAF's parade, but not to say that you're just filler for us, but this is gonna be fun, more so fun for us than I think we were planning on it to be more fun for us than fun for whoever's listening, I guess is what we're trying to say. So that sounded bad, didn't it? That's okay. I'll stand by it. That's what it sounds like. That's what it is.
That's the truth.
Yeah, I'm there.
No, that's okay. Listen, because everybody's got to have something that makes them happy, right? And if talking about the AAF makes you happy, then I'm all for it, because that's the exact same reason that I'm here right now, too. CFL season's been over since November, and I got nothing to talk about for at least another couple of months. And yeah, so for me to sit in front of a mic and talk about more football, hell yeah, I'm in.
Yeah, that sounds right. That sounds like where we're at.
Excellent. So, all right, we've got this little community going. Like, what do you feel about the podcast community? I know there's been some shade back and forth, but I mean, overall, what are your feelings about this growing community?
I've actually been surprised. I had it in my head that this was going to be a more, or maybe a less polite place. It's really been pretty laid back, or maybe my idea of polite is just different than everybody else's. It's been great. I mean, we go back and forth with the Shipyard a little bit, and they go back and forth with us. The Command Post, we go back and forth with them. I think I haven't, like I said, I haven't had any negative tweets. I throw the challenge out there. I have not had any negative tweets. We have not seen any negative tweets come to us. We haven't had any negative calls into the hotline. Nobody has told us how much they hate us yet. So it's been pretty chill.
I love it. And I hope it stays that way, at least for the next 10 games. Maybe we're just getting our feet wet before we figure out how to start really getting on each other's nerves. Maybe this is like the family that's coming together, and then we'll, around Thanksgiving, start learning how to pick on each other, and then by Christmas
Exactly.
we'll all want each other out of the house.
That could be.
Well, we'll be leaving.
We'll be gone by then. Yeah, out the door. I think it's been fun too because we have the newer shows that are coming on. Like I guess the Iron just showed up. The Iron Forge. I think they're
Crown Loyal.
Crown Loyal
just showed up. So with the newer shows that are coming in, I think it's been great. I've been having a great time with it.
Yeah, I do look forward to more of this, and I look forward to a lot more interaction over the course of the next 10 weeks because it really is short. I mean, blink and you're done. Canadian football is 20 weeks long, so it's a grind. And for this to be over before it even starts, I feel it's just going to be like, and where'd the season go? Yeah,
I think so too. I mean, we're doing the NFL season, and it feels like it flies by doing one show for 17 weeks.
Yeah. Well, speaking of which, I know it's Saturday as we tape this, and there are divisional games going on. So you guys got your Broken Plane podcast getting ready to go again, right?
Yeah, every Wednesday. We record them back to back, this one and Fleet Speak.
Very nice. Okay, well, we are going to end it there only because Kumbaya session is over, and we've had such a great time talking to you. But I want to give you guys a chance to pitch your show and Broken Plane if you want to. It doesn't matter to me. Tell everybody where to find you on social media and on the interwebs.
Oh man, you're gonna make me remember the Twitter handles now, and I'm so bad at that. It's I think it's Fleet Speak at Fleet Speak on
I don't remember.
Twitter. And the Broken Plane Pod on Twitter is the other one, or at the Broken Plane. I'm so bad with these things.
I think you have them backwards.
Here's the great thing. We're at that point in the show's life now. You can Google it.
Exactly.
Go to Google and type in Fleet Speak, and it'll just pop up. That's the best way to find it.
Beautiful.
Don't ever trust me to send you the right way when it comes to this kind of stuff. I'm so bad.
It's all right. Look, and you're right. We're to the point now in this world where everything is a Google search away. My brother and I have this saying, there's no reason not to know. So if you're, feeling confused, go ahead and Google Fleet Speak. I would say I'd put it in the show notes, but I'm not a show notes kind of guy. So just Google Fleet Speak. You can do it while you're listening to this, and we'll be good.
Exactly.
All right, gentlemen. That is JB and TK. They are the host of this. I can't even say it now. The Fleet Speak podcast. You guys got me all tongue-tied.
Yep.
The Fleet Speak podcast. Again, a podcast about the San Diego Fleet. They are from Oregon, but they're still bleeding San Diego. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Rich.
Yeah, thank you.
And that will put an end to another episode of the Alliance Football Podcast. Episode 6 is complete. I want to thank, again, the AAF Whiz Kid for coming on the show. Great conversation. And wow, what a time to be alive, right? We got kids that are covering the sport and doing a phenomenal job at it. So find him on Twitter at AAF Whiz Kid. And then, of course, the fine folks at the Fleet Speak Podcast. We are so happy that they joined us. You can find them on Twitter at Fleet Speak Pod. And then, of course, you can find their show anywhere that you can find your favorite podcast. I still have 6 episodes in, and I still have no clever way to end this show. I'm telling you, I'm racking my brain. So we are going to say goodbye until next week. And man, we are ever getting closer to February. So can we just start the season? That's what I'm saying. But all right, until next time, we'll see you.